Hello. Today I want to speak to you about, well, quite a lot of things. We are approaching our maiden voyage launch on the 11th of November. And I felt I wanted to share this contemplation on the nature of awareness, and also perhaps talk a little bit about how I became, or how I was chosen to be a spiritual teacher. Let's start by addressing what is meant by the word spiritual or spirituality, or what is the essence of all the traditions, of all the religions, uh, of all the different methods and ways to express the eternal truth. So what spirituality is all about is finding what it means when we say I or I am. It may not sound like much. It may sound like a profoundly simple journey, which it is. I think we are approaching now the era where it is possible for a vast number of humans, at least compared to the previous eras, to directly investigate the nature of I. This means humanity is at the beginning of its most profound, most transformative journey. In the previous millennia, it has only been possible for a few individuals like Buddha or Socrates or Lao Tse to see clearly through the physical world to the essence of it all, and realize that what we essentially are is neither born nor does it die. now something is shifting on this planet, and we are coming to the end of deluding ourselves that more material wealth or more exciting experiences or even more refined relationships can ultimately make us happy. There is a good reason why we, historically speaking, have identified with the body, and the basic understanding of our reality is that I am the body, which means that when the body dies, I die. And it's, of course, an important aspect of living because humanity had to survive for thousands of years. And indeed, the necessities of the body were incredibly important because uh, there tended to be scarcity of food sources, and um, the threat of dying of hunger and these other kinds of challenges were very real for the human body. So now that, at least in the Western world, hunger and dying of hunger is something that has been largely addressed, we find ourselves in a different kind of dilemma. No matter how much we know more about the brain, no matter how many more drugs and diagnoses we create, no matter how much we invest or try to do to make humans feel better, human overall health seems to be deteriorating. Both our happiness and health of the body seem to be increasingly difficult to maintain for a large number of humans. This puts an enormous amount of pressure on the human species to investigate who we really are. Because it is only through exploring the nature of I that we can come to a profound understanding of ourselves. And it is only with the realization that we are consciousness and that we can find no limits to consciousness. And finally, that consciousness is unlimited. It is only through that realization that we can find a truly stable, independent happiness. I've always wanted to create things. I've always liked being an entrepreneur and doing my own stuff. Now I realize that whatever I do in the world to facilitate, for example, better technologies and development of the human species in that way, even if humanity were to evolve to a level where we have all these warp drives and wormhole gates, which are found in the science fiction stories, none of it really matters if we do not realize that we are consciousness. It will be just another bunch of dysfunctional humans going through the wormhole gates and spreading misery all over the galaxy instead of spreading misery all over the planet. So nothing fundamental really changes. It's not hard to see how we become here. I mean, once we started to examine our perceptions and started to apply thoughts in a scientific way, it seems at first glimpse obvious that, well, it's a material world made of physical objects, and I'm one of those physical objects. And as all physical objects have an expiration date, I too have an expiration date. But at the first glimpse, the Earth looks like a dome with flat surface and everything being inside a giant dome. So our first assumptions of reality are perhaps always misguided in some ways. We believe so easily that our concepts of reality are correct, and it's seemingly so easy to find proof that it is so. Luckily, our notions, our common notions of reality, are not correct. Consciousness, the one reality, which is hearing these words, perceiving these thoughts, feeling these feelings, etc., is not, as some have suggested, a mistake in evolution. It is our fundamental, most intimate, direct experience of our infinite and indivisible nature. There is literally nothing more important for me to say. I think I'm still in a state of awesome shock, because understanding that awareness is both the fundamental nature of I and the universe, and it is ultimately what reality is. It's the joy of understanding this is breathtaking. It cannot really be put into words, but since I love talking, I'm going to try. We don't normally see that the choices we make, things we avoid, things we cling to, things we try to grab, these are consequences of thinking activity that originates with the thought I that believes itself to be a fragment, to be a body, to be a person. And believing itself to be a fragment, particularly believing itself to be a person, we are always afraid of losing our being, our awareness. We are afraid of this because for a while we've forgotten who we really are. And from this, we could call it the first error. So the first error blinds us from our reality, which can be directly experienced right now in the present moment as joy, peace, love, creativity. And for some reason, this investigation into this nature of consciousness or I is not a fundamental part of our culture. It's been for the relatively few. Yet, I believe I'm speaking here these words because a shift is coming. And perhaps it is no longer only reserved for the few. Because although we are the one reality, and the source of everything, including the manifested universe, from the viewpoint of the fragment, it sounds mystical or somehow unrealistic or impossible or something like that. I think many of us actually feel that it makes sense that there is an infinite fundamental source to reality, and that there is an infinite fundamental source to every material object. So spiritual search could also be defined in the following way. Merging the words infinite, which points to infinity, something ungraspable by human mind, and the word consciousness, which points to our everyday intimate experience. There is no greater wonder that our everyday experience that we know so well turns out to be a gateway, or not really even a gateway, turns out to be infinite. For if there is something infinite, how could you not be a part of it? For if you are not a part of it, if the squirrel is not a part of it, if a random thought is not a part of it, then it wouldn't be infinite, would it? So if you contemplate this, the nature of infinity, we will have to come to the simple conclusion that if there is infinity, I and everything have to be it. Otherwise, the infinite would not be infinite. So, after contemplating these matters for some years, I clearly felt that sharing this understanding is truly the one thing that makes professional sense for me. Because, like I previously said, if we cannot find unlimited, unconditioned joy, happiness, peace at the center of our being, humankind is going to have more elaborate tools for wars and all the stuff that's happening on the planet. I mean, ultimately, our environmental challenges and such things, they also lead back to the first error of believing ourselves to be a person which exists separately from nature. I mean, all the indigenous people realized that we are nature. We are part of nature. So we've taken incredible steps in many technological areas. We've learned to play this game with our mind where we isolate phenomena and we treat them isolated and we study them in an isolated, restricted manner, which leads to uh, more specific, more wondrous technologies. But for this fragmentation, we are also paying a very steep price. For the religions that were born around sages, the sages, for the most part, they were real. They had a clear insight into reality. And faith is perhaps one of the first intuitions humans can have of our eternal nature. And for an extended period of time, humans were not developed enough to go further, so to speak. So we did manage to rid ourselves, for the most part, of we no longer have to believe in a hell, for example, or that there is some tyrant that keeps the score, so to speak, and evaluates your spirit at the time of death and send you to burn for an eternity, or maybe you are reincarnated as a fly in a cow's butthole, or whatever. I don't need to list all the religious beliefs people have. So yes, to some extent we have made progress. That is no longer necessary. We can choose to be free of nonsense. But as it is so often, we then assume too much just because that kind of religion is nonsense. That doesn't mean there isn't an original insight inside religions. that can be of tremendous value to humans today, even to non-religious people. Actually, if you are a scientific mind, you will find lots of studies that religious people have healthier bodies and live happier lives and live longer as well. So it would be wise, considering how difficult life has become, normal life has become for many people, to look for that something in religions that may explain the good results many people are experiencing from religion. I am proposing that humanity now enters a different era. We can leave both this sort of separate, vengeful God behind, and we can also leave physicalism and materialism, which basically makes life meaningless. It says something like, after lots of material evolution, consciousness is born and it doesn't really have a purpose. So that's absolutely horrible to believe. And the global depression that we are having is a natural result of this belief system. What I'm suggesting requires even less belief than the belief in a material world. Because consciousness is everyone's direct, fundamental experience. We cannot have an experience without consciousness. It is experiencing. This is why the proposition that there is something like physical matter that exists independently of consciousness is an unprovable concept. So we are locked in. There have been many smart, wise people who have warned from this kind of approach that you have a theory that can never be verified. So matter and physicality is also a religion. It may not seem like that because it's so common, but if we investigate it closer, it is actually quite an incoherent one. First of all, what we call physical world or reality somehow seems to match that there are sight objects, objects that we hear or heard, objects that are smelled, objects that are tasted, and objects that are touched. So what we call reality seems to completely coincide with the 5 human senses. Now, if one is naturally curious, this seems like a coincidence that cannot really be a coincidence. So it's obvious that our reality it's just what we experience through the senses, and it looks that the world feels that it is that way is because we have these sense organs that operate in a certain way at certain frequencies. So why does investigating the nature of consciousness require less belief than the belief that there is matter outside consciousness? It's because we always experience consciousness or knowing or being. Even in deep sleep, if someone asks us, did you exist when you slept? You don't have to go to the camera feed and, yes, there is a body sleeping. No, you'll know from direct experience. I am. There is no, there was no discontinuity in my being. And so how can you know? There has to be awareness for you to make that statement. So this being is something that's always there. It's our fundamental experience. It requires no belief as such. Then the next step, where you investigate the nature of this awareness, this is something you conduct yourself. And perhaps you examine it with someone who has gone before you and ask them questions. Each time when you feel you found proof that awareness is limited, a valid teacher can point out to you why this is not so. So you come to the conclusion that, well, maybe awareness is unlimited through your own investigation. So how do we go from here, being open to the possibility that awareness is unlimited, to the direct understanding that we share this essential awareness with everything and everyone? So if it is true that awareness is unlimited, and that is your real nature, acting in the world in a way that you are not a person, but instead this universal awareness, it should show itself to you. You should have empirical proof. I mean, how you feel and how your life unfolds, because it makes sense that if you are unlimited, behaving in that way, the universe responds to you, and you will have all the direct proof you need. Your whole being is then immersed in this kind of love and a gratitude for life. So first, you come to the understanding, I am awareness. Then exploring the possibility of awareness being unlimited, you come to the recognition that you cannot you cannot find any proof of it being unlimited. And it makes sense to then give it a try. And then it is life itself that will show you that you are on the right path. There is no more urgent discovery than knowing yourself as unlimited awareness. I hope you enjoyed this contemplation. I certainly did.